Injuries, referees. We just got Fellaini back. I don't know what that. Shh. Just quiet down, Jose. We all know what happened. You got beat by a better team. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and it always feels just so good to beat Man U, but it feels even better whenever it's against a manager that just will not stop talking crap about your team. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this game. Obviously, do have a lot of respect for Jose and what he did for us when he was here, but I mean, ever since he's left and gone to Man U, he's just become so annoying. And part of that is because he's now the manager of Man U, but also it's like all the stuff that he didn't bother me when he was at Chelsea because he was winning games for us, and that's all that mattered. But now that he dumped our club in the trash before he left, and then just completely bashed players, bashed everything about the club, and then now he's at Man U, and it feels like every single time is like he's bashing Conte. He's got something to say. Just like, shut up, okay? I'm done. So, yeah, let's talk about this game because, frankly, there's some very interesting things going into it that really got me excited about this game. First of all, apparently there was a bust up in the training ground. Don't know if that's true or if it's being exaggerated. I don't know exactly what happened. I've seen a lot of different articles talking about what happened, but I don't really take any of those articles to heart because I know most of them are just looking for a story where there is none. But for whatever reason, Kennedy and David Luiz were both moved to the stands today because of something that apparently went down in the training grounds. It'll be interesting to see if this maybe inspires them to work harder to get into the team. In fact, after the game, Conte was asked, does David Luiz have a future? And he pretty much said, I don't know. He has to work hard if he wants to get his place. And if he's not going to, he can sit on the bench or even in the stands. So clearly it's become apparent to Conte that David Luiz isn't pulling his weight this season. Now, I've noticed this for several games now. I've been pissed with David Luiz and Gary Cahill, obviously. But it's like David Luiz, my frustration with him was a little bit greater because last season it felt like he had matured from the David Luiz that we sold. That David Luiz that was crazy and, sending long balls down the field to absolutely nobody, going into stupid challenges. That David Luiz I was excited to get rid of when he came back, and under Conte last season, he seemed much more mature, he seemed much more in control, but then this season it's like he's back to that David Luiz again. And so I've been really pissed off with him because why would you go back to that? Why would you return to the bad habits that you used to have when you got into such good habits last season? So, I don't know, it's a little bit exciting to me to see a manager say, you know what? You're not pulling your weight, you're not doing your job, get in the stands. Not even on the bench today, get in the stands. I like a manager who's willing to do that. Obviously, with Gary Cahill, it's a little bit of a different situation because, one, he's the captain, and two, I don't know, Conte sees something in him that just... It's not necessarily his attitude that's the problem. For me, it's his style of play that's the problem. And most managers aren't going to take somebody off because some of the fans don't like his style of play. But whatever the case, David Luiz has clearly shown Conte that he's not able to be trusted this season. So Christensen gets to start in the middle. Queta and Cahill are beside him. Don't really have a problem with Cahill if David Luiz is not in the middle. It's when those two are starting together that there's a serious problem there. So I think this formation, this back line, will be a little bit more solid overall. I think putting Rudiger back there could still be somewhat solid, but then most of the time that moves Queta to the right side, and I don't think that works most of the time. So, but that back three, I think is a pretty solid back three. Alonso's still playing on the left because there's not really another option there, and then Zappacosta gets to start again on the right side, which I'm all for because I think he's a pretty good player. I think he deserves a bit more time. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle it when Moses comes back because I think they need to balance their time. You can't just play Moses over and over and over again, even though he's a very good player. Zappacosta's shown he's a good player too. But I am excited for Moses to return mainly because it means you can't move Queta out to the right side now. That's not an option because you've got two right wing backs. Well, he still could, but most likely it's not going to happen. In the middle is where it got a little bit more interesting. it was kind of fluctuating in how the game went, and I think that's one of the best things about having all of your midfielders back from injury is that it creates a lot of free flowing people in your midfield. So Conte generally held back a bit deeper than Fabregas and Bakayoko, but at the same time, Fabregas also had a little bit deeper, but then also got up. Bakayoko, of the three, was probably forward the most. He was involved in a lot of the attacks. He seemed to be getting forward the most. But then late on, when we needed him to, he dropped in deep and put in his defensive duties as well. So, and then up top, Hazard and Morata. Hazard kind of played almost like a secondary striker, but in truth, he was just a free roaming midfielder. And I think that number 10 role for him is probably his best, mainly because it just gives him the freedom to go wherever he wants to. If he wants to float to the left side, he can. If he wants to float to the right side, he can. And the best part about that is that means that defenders have to be aware of where he is on the field. You can't really man mark somebody if he's going to roam from left to right to left to right. That's very difficult to do. If you try to do that, maybe it could work. We saw last season Herrera did okay, but honestly, a lot of that was down to the fact that there was no movement up there with Hazard. Today, there's so much more movement. And so it didn't matter who was on Hazard. Most of the time, he has somebody making a run for him, so the defender can't just go in and try to win the ball, because if they do, he can just flick it on to that person. So today they had to stand him up a little bit more. They had to stand off of him, and that gave him space to create. And yeah, I think this lineup works very well for this situation. Now, going forward into some of the other games against different teams, is this going to work as well? Maybe not. This is a formation that gives you the freedom to sort of, I guess, get ready to counterattack going forward, because we know Man U's going to send some players forward, and when they do, it's a matter of picking it off of them and then getting it down the field very quickly. This formation allows for that, but it also allows for a bit of freedom. If one of or two of your midfielders want to step up, they can now get into the attack, and then we can be a lot more attacking as well. So it is kind of almost like a free-flowing, roaming formation. It could change and fluctuate depending on what you need. So I do like this formation, but I'm not sure it's going to be effective against every team. I think it was very effective to get today against Man U, but that's not always going to be the team you're playing. So I'll be interested to see if Conte chooses to stick with this formation. I would like to see Christensen get more time, but that's getting more into individuals, so let's start talking about that. First of all, Courtois. Once again, making the saves he should. But there's definitely the confidence for him this season has not been as high. And basically what I mean by that is when he was younger, it seemed like he was full of confidence at his age. He looked like one of the best keepers, and he was so young as well. So it's just like, how much better can he get? Well, we're a couple of years removed from that, and he's still really good, but it just feels like he's making a bit more mistakes. And like I said before, it feels like he's making the saves he should be making, but then the fantastic saves that you see keepers like De Gea, Lloris, Neuer, those top keepers will make saves that you're just like, there's no way they're getting to that, and all of a sudden they get to that. I haven't really seen him make those saves recently, and there weren't any of those shots today like that. There were 2 shots on target, both of them were within reach, so it's just like, yeah, he can make those saves. But I want to see him start making the saves that keep us in games. The one where, Shirawe has a great half volley to the far side of the goal. I want to see him start making those saves to keep us in the game. So it's more, obviously don't have a problem with them today because, frankly, I don't think he was really tested today. Mourinho in his post-match press conference was saying something along the lines of, we scored whenever we were on top of the game today, but the rest of the time, it was even. No. We created much better chances overall. They had 2 good chances early on, and then we dominated the game, and then they had 2 good chances late on, and that was it. Just another Mourinho statement. It's just like, dude, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, so he wasn't really tested today, so I didn't have a problem with him today, but there were a couple times, he dropped it. It felt like he wasn't coming out as confidently as he used to. So I don't know. I'm a bit concerned that he's sort of losing that confidence. I'm really hoping he can gain back the confidence that he had because we need him to be 100% world class keeper that we know he can be. We've seen it before. Um, Into the back line, Espilicueta on the right side had another good game. Had to deal with Rashford most of the game, and I mean, that's no easy task. He's very quick. He's very good at getting behind the defense and really causing problems for it, trying to beat the offside trap. But today, Spilicueta was aware of him most of the game, had to make some runs with him and stay with him a lot, and he did a very good job of shutting him down most of the game. So Christensen in the middle, like I said, really, really like him there. I think he's looked good every time I've seen him play, and today it was no different. Very confident for being so young, very good at being in the middle and just being that buffer in the defense. Unlike David Luiz, who likes to step in and be more of a stopper, Christensen likes to drop and be a bit more of a sweeper. And that today worked very, very well because Manu just kept trying to go long, and it would be somebody makes the challenge, but Christensen's already dropped deep, so if it gets flicked on, he's there to win it. So he did a very good job of reading a lot of that today. Had to be under pressure from Lukaku a couple times and held up under the challenge very well. So I really like what I'm seeing from him. I hope he continues to be in the heart of that defense because I think he's doing a very good job right now, and I think he could be a big key to getting us back into the title challenge. Because we are still kind of in the title challenge, but right now, obviously, Man City's running away with it. So if we want to start putting together a string of wins and hope Man City can drop some points here and there, that could get us back into it, and we know December's coming. I think Christensen could be a big, big part of that. So Cahill on the left side, didn't have any problems with him today. Overall, he wasn't great, but he was solid today. But yeah, I still don't think he's good enough, to be in there over Rudiger. Rudiger, I'll talk about him in a second, not the best today, but I still just think he has a bit more quality than Cahill does. Cahill he lacks a bit of speed. His strength at times isn't good enough, and a lot of the times it feels like he just doesn't read the game very well. Rashford had a good chance early on because Cahill's not picking him up, and he goes to step to this guy. Well, Rashford's now wide open at the back post, and you haven't called Alonso back in or anything like that, so why are you leaving him in a ton of space? So I just feel like there's a lack of organization, and whenever he's your captain, he should be the one organizing, but it doesn't never feel like he does. So, I don't know, overall I'm disappointed with the fact that he's our captain. I'm disappointed with the fact that he's getting more game time than Rudiger. But today, not really a bad game from him. It was okay, it was good. Alonso on the left side, though, I will say was our worst player today. Defensively, just not good enough, and on the attack, not good enough with the passing. I mean, he's been on the decline. I thought against Roma he was terrible. Today, not much better. Thankfully they didn't really get a lot of chances down our left side because, that was open today. Alonso isn't quick enough to keep up with Valencia, and honestly, their best chances did come from the right side, their right side. Now that I think about it, Valencia dumping in the ball because Alonso's letting him have a ton of space late on and dumping it into a bunch of tall players in there. You can't let him have that space. He's got to be better defensively, and then whenever you get on the ball, you've either got to put in a good cross or you've got to make sure that you keep possession. But it just feels like he's not producing that quality anymore. At times he does okay, but when you look at it on the whole, he's just not good enough right now. And that's honestly one of the biggest problems is that we don't have a backup for him. We don't have somebody that can take his place. Kennedy is the only one that can right now as far as positioning, but his attitude isn't right. He disagreeing with Conte, and now he's in the stands. So what are we supposed to do about it now? The only thing I can think of is the possibility of dropping Pedro there because he's done that in the past, or even Willian. I do think Willian is a better wing player than he is playing in the center. I think he does a very good job running down the line, cutting inside. So there's a possibility trying to drop Willian or Pedro in there, but that's about the only option we have. But Alonso just has not been good enough to warrant the continual playing time that he's getting. Zappacosta on the right side, in my opinion, played really well today again. Just very good defensively, very good on the attack, very dangerous. The thing is, he doesn't have a ton of speed, but his hard work to keep the ball, to keep possession, it does a lot of the work for him. He's in a crowd of two or three people and he's just cutting, just trying to keep possession of the ball, and somehow he makes it out of that crowd and he's in space now. But I really like what I'm seeing from him. He's a very clever player, very good at sending it across as well. Very dangerous crosses today that caused a lot of problems for Man U's back line. So I like what I see from him. I like the fact that he's playing well enough to warrant keeping him there so Espilicueta can stay in the back three. But yeah, obviously, hopefully Moses comes back soon because he won't be able to play every game, Zappacosta, but I really do like what I'm seeing from him so far. I hope he continues to warrant the trust of Conte, so that way Espilicueta can stay back. Fabregas in the middle played pretty well today. Definitely better than he played against Roma. His passes were coming off a lot better today. His interceptions, he did a lot better at reading the game and working hard to win the ball. Overall, good game from him. Not much else I can say about it. Bakayoko, probably the best game I think I've seen him play for us this season. Definitely looks like he is worth the money that we paid for him. And one of the things that I was saying at the beginning of the season, everybody's talking about, Drinkwater, is he really a good replacement for Matic? Bakayoko was the replacement for Matic. You look at their style of play, the big body, keeping possession in the midfield, winning the ball out of the air in the midfield. That's both of them. Bakayoko and Matic, very similar styles. But with Bakayoko, first of all, he's a bit younger than Matic, and on top of that, he provides a bit more on the attack. His finishing today was terrible, but watching him combine up top, watching him play, move the ball quickly, it was really good, and it's stuff that Matic generally wasn't very good at. His passing at times could be really sporadic. There's some games where I don't think he completed more than 3 passes a game. So, yeah, seeing Bakayoko managing to complete those passes, managing to provide that stability in the midfield, but also help out in the attack as well. He was on fire today, and I'm just like, that's what we bought him for. We bought him to replace Matic, and today I thought he did that job very well. But part of that was down to Conte being back in the midfield. He did what he always does, and I'm glad to be able to say that again, because it's been a very long time since I was able to say that about him. Finally back from injury and looking like he's picking up right where he left off. Just constantly running, constantly just dominating the midfield, putting pressure, winning the ball off of people. He's a threat. Anytime he's on the field, he's a threat because all he's got to do is poke it off of you, and his speed and his quickness, he can turn it on, and all of a sudden he's running at your back line. They're just like, what do we do? But yeah, he just showed his importance today. Because having him in there not only takes some of the pressure off your defense, but also allows for the release of a player like Bakayoko, who has the ability that he does, to sort of just have his freedom and be able to roam and help out in the attack and get back whenever he needs to. That would not be able... Bakayoko, without Conte in there, has to be that defensive player. He has to be the type of player Conte is. He has to work hard to win the ball. But with Conte in there, now Bakayoko can be Bakayoko. He can be the player that we bought, the clever player that works hard defensively but also can get up and help out in the attack. So I love seeing that combination in there, and it just provides so much more stability in the midfield. Get up to the front two, Hazard. Definitely a good game from him today. Like I said in the midweek, he was the only one that I thought had a good game because he was trying so much. He worked as hard as he could, but his teammates weren't helping him out at all, so he was trying to do it all on his own, and it wasn't working out for him. Today, much better from him because he could rely on his teammates today. They were making the runs for him. Every time he played it to him, he got it back, or they did something with it, something productive. It's just so much easier for him today because he actually had help. Most of the time, it was Murata making a good run. It was Bakayoko making a good run. It was Fabregas providing that support for him. Just all around, he was able to not only create his space, but also have the players to work off of him. And like I said, the game against Man U last season where we lost, and they were talking about, look at Herrera doing such a great job of man-marking Hazard. He man-marked him out of the game. A lot of that was down to the fact that Hazard didn't have help that game. Costa was just immobile. Pedro was on the far side of the field and wasn't checking over. It was pretty much Hazard trying to do stuff on his own. And so, yeah, it's easy to man-mark a guy whenever he has no options. When his only option is to dribble, it's easy to man-mark him. But today, whenever he's got 3 or 4 options and then he can also dribble, I mean, that's difficult. That's difficult to defend against, and it showed. So, good game from him. And finally, Murata up top. Great game from him. I've been pretty critical of him the past few games. I thought, he hasn't stepped up to take the starting spot. Batshuayi hasn't stepped up. Today, Murata stepped up. And it's back to kind of what we saw at the beginning of the year. The very clever movement, the hard work to keep the ball. That game against Atletico Madrid at Atletico was fantastic because he put so much pressure on the back line. Today, we saw that again. We saw him putting that pressure on the back line. We saw him, putting in challenges. He got so many fouls called on him and probably should have had an own goal from one of his challenges, but the referee was an idiot. But yeah, that challenge that we saw him put in against Atletico, we haven't seen it since that game. Ever since then, it's just been, some good movement, but not really a strong physical challenge. Today, he was there, and he made sure his physical presence was known. So it was great to see from him. I thought he did a very good job overall. Provided a lot of help up top for us. Getting to the subs, first one was Rudiger came on for Zappacosta. That moved Aspilicueta out to the right. I was a little bit concerned, mainly because, why would you do this? We know Aspilicueta on the right doesn't work. But frankly, it was to shut up shop. A lot of it was, dump balls in from Man U because Fellaini was in, Lukaku's up there, Matic is in as well. All a bunch of big bodies that they can dump it into. So yeah, it's nice to have another big body in there. Aspilicueta's not that, so it did make sense. But at the same time, Rudiger definitely struggling in these past 2 games. Against Roma, I wondered if maybe he was just playing against his old team. Maybe that kind of got into him mentally. But today, once again, seeing some missed clearances, not the best passes from him. It just looks a little bit off these past 2 games. So don't know if maybe it's a mentality, maybe it's something going on with him physically, maybe a little injury, something going on. But hopefully it's not something too serious. It's something he can move on from because we do need him to be back to what we've seen most of the season, which has been really, really good. Drinkwater came on next for Fabregas. Just giving Fabregas a break, giving some fresh legs into the midfield, and yeah, it did help. He put in a decent performance with his hard work, but honestly, he didn't get to touch the ball a lot. It was mainly just putting pressure in the midfield that I noticed from him, and he did it pretty well. I'll be interested to see if he and Conte are kind of going to be able to form that partnership that they did at Leicester 2 years ago when they won the league, because if they can, that would be great. Because we need some better, just a little bit better movement in the midfield, movement off of each other, more understanding. And so it's working okay now, but it could be a little bit better. And I think if Conte and Drinkwater maybe form a bit, that partnership back up again, it could be really, really effective. And the last one was Willian for Hazard. Just a bit of pace in there. Willian has a bit more of a defensive, attack-minded defensive player. I don't know how to describe him, but he is very good at trying to win the ball back, putting hard pressure on people. He's very good at doing that, so completely understand that one. Give Hazard a break as well, which is very nice. So yeah, we end up winning 1-0, and I guess I'll throw in a mention of the referees. I'll talk about first the own goal. Yeah, it should have been an own goal. There wasn't enough of a challenge. You could see Murata did put in a challenge on him, but Jones felt the contact from behind and started to flop. And as he did, he realized, I might not get this, so let me go ahead and try to clear it. And as he does, he buries it upper 90. So it's very clear he was trying to play up the foul, and when he does, he ends up scoring, and the referee, because he's like, oh, well, we can't let them score off of this, decides to give the foul. The frustrating part about that is, if you're going to give that, fine. But you have to do it both ways. You have to start calling the soft stuff both ways, and he didn't. It felt like there were a lot of fouls that were very soft going Man U's way. I realized there were 26 fouls and 36 fouls, 20 for Man U, 16 for Chelsea. But a lot of those Chelsea fouls were very soft. It was Herrera diving. It was a defender under pressure from Murata, and all of a sudden it's a foul for no reason. Most of the fouls that Man U had were fouls. They're tripping up Hazard from behind. You got Fellaini throwing elbows out there. and then descend to the referee, and there's no yellow card for that. But I don't know. It felt like there were a lot of decisions that just they were going one way, and then eventually we get a call. It's like, oh, thanks, referee. So I don't know. Obviously, as a fan, I'm a bit more biased, so I want to see it one way, not the other. But I mean, between that goal that should have been a goal, there was pretty sure there's a penalty claim for us. That was there. I feel like there was one that possibly could. Oh, there was a challenge on Murata, and I remember Graham Lasso and Lee Dixon were talking about if the roles had been reversed, if Jones had pushed Murata like that in the box, would it have been a penalty? And then later on in the game, we see Smalling kind of gives him a little nudge like he did to Jones earlier, but then there's nothing. So that clearly shows, yeah, that's a foul, but then that's not a foul. That's wrong. You know, if that nudge is enough to put him off to where he scores an own goal, and then that nudge is enough to where Murata can't even get a touch on the ball because Smalling pretty much moves him out of the way, where's the difference? You know, there's no difference there. It's just one takes away a goal and one makes sure there's no goal. So both of them make no goal. I don't know. I get really frustrated with referees. You know, bad referee in our amateur league game today. Stupid. But that's about it from this game, so let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on this game? Let me know what we can talk about and discuss, all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea reviews. I'll see you guys in the next game. Peace out.